I just like him.
You like the gingers?
I do. I do.
When Raquel Welch decides to be honest, she doesn't blush. She smirks. The interviewer barely gets the question out before that famous laugh fills the room. 6? She teases. Only 6? You're letting me off easy. She settles back, eyes gleaming like someone flipping through a lifetime of movie reels in her mind. You have to understand. I came up in a time when every set was crawling with charisma. Real charisma. Not just pretty faces, but men who knew how to look at you like you were the only person in the frame. I'd walk onto a soundstage, and half the time I'd forget what scene we were shooting. Her voice drops a notch, the kind of tone that once made headlines. I've shared screens with legends, men who could melt the camera just by leaning on a doorway. Some were funny, some were dangerous, some were just impossible not to watch. And a few… She lets the pause hang, that trademark grin curving slow. A few made me wish the director would call for one more take, just to see if the magic would last. She laughs softly, shaking her head. People always assume it was about beauty. But that's not it. What gets you isn't looks, it's confidence, humor, a little danger maybe. The ones who made me laugh or look twice, those are the ones I remember. She leans in, conspiratorial, voice glinting with mischief. And yes, I remember them, all 6. I behaved, mostly, but there were moments that still make me smile when I think about them. Moments when the chemistry was real enough to make even me forget I was acting. Then she sits back, eyes twinkling. So, you really want to know who they were? A slow grin spreads across her face. All right, darling. But don't say I didn't warn you. 1. Burt Reynolds. Raquel laughs before the interviewer even finishes saying his name. Burt, she says, shaking her head like she's just remembered an inside joke. Now, that was a man who knew how to make an entrance. She leans back, smiling at the memory. We did 100 rifles together, back in the late 60s. Dust, heat, chaos, and Burt right there in the middle of it, acting like he was born to handle all of it. He had that wild charm, that grin that said he knew exactly what he was doing and didn't mind you knowing it too. Her tone turns fond, amused. Burt was pure mischief, but the good kind. He had this energy that could turn a long, miserable day into a good time. The crew adored him. You couldn't stay mad at the man, even when he was driving you crazy. She grins wider. On set, he was trouble. The kind that makes you roll your eyes and laugh anyway. He'd crack a joke right before a take just to see if I could keep a straight face. And half the time, I couldn't. That sparkle he had on camera? It wasn't acting. It was just Burt being Burt. Then her expression softens a little. He was generous too. A real old-school gentleman underneath all that bravado, always made sure his co-stars had the spotlight when they needed it. He understood that chemistry isn't about stealing scenes. It's about sharing them. Raquel laughs again, shaking her head. He had that twinkle, like he knew every secret in the room and might tell one if you asked nicely. Working with him was pure fun. Exhausting, unpredictable, but fun. She tilts her head, a spark of nostalgia in her eyes. You know, you can't fake that kind of charisma. Burt didn't just walk onto a set. He owned it. And if you were smart, you just held your ground and enjoyed the ride. 2. Dean Martin. Raquel smiles before she even answers. Dean Martin, she says softly, like the name itself is a melody. Nobody else ever had that kind of cool. It wasn't an act. It was who he was. You couldn't tell where the man ended and the legend began. She laughs, the sound half admiration, half disbelief. We did Bandolero, together. I was still finding my footing in Hollywood, and there's Dean, charming, relaxed, always with that half smile like he knew the punchline before you did. He made everyone around him loosen up. The man could turn a tense shoot into a party. Raquel shakes her head, grinning. Dean had this rhythm about him. You'd be running lines, and suddenly he'd start humming or tossing jokes to the crew. Somehow, when the cameras rolled, He'd hit every note perfectly. You'd think, he's not even trying, but that was his genius. He made everything look effortless. Her tone softens. He was kind, too. The kind of kindness that didn't ask for credit. Always made sure you were comfortable. Always made time for a laugh. I'd watch him glide through a room and think, so that's what Grace looks like in a tuxedo. She chuckles. Dean Martin didn't have to raise his voice or strike a pose. He just was. And when you worked with him, you couldn't help but fall right into that rhythm. Slower, smoother, easier. Everything felt a little better when Dean was around. Then she smiles, eyes bright with mischief. There was something about that twinkle of his. You couldn't tell if he was about to sing, flirt, or tell you the best joke you'd ever heard. Probably all three. And I'll tell you this. There was never another one quite like him. 3. Frank Sinatra Raquel lets out a long breath before she even speaks, like she's bracing for the memory. Frank, she says, smiling. Now that was a man who didn't need to try. He'd walk into a room, and it just shifted. The temperature, the tone, the way people stood, everything changed. She laughs, soft and knowing. I met Frank in the 70s, and believe me, he was exactly what you think. Cool as midnight, smooth as silk, and sharp enough to cut you down with a single line, all while making you love him for it. She tilts her head, remembering. We never did a full film together, but our paths crossed more than once. Same events, same circles, same long dinners that ended in laughter, and Sinatra at the piano. And when Frank sang, even in a quiet room, you couldn't look anywhere else. He didn't perform. He commanded. Her grin widens, playful. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world for 3 minutes. Then the song ended, and you remembered there were 50 other people in the room feeling exactly the same thing. That was his magic. He made every woman feel seen. Raquel chuckles, shaking her head. You couldn't outcharm him, and you couldn't ignore him. He had that rare mix of confidence and care. He'd tease you 1 minute and pull your chair out the next. Old school, all the way. Then her voice softens, almost reverent. There's a reason they called him the chairman of the board. He didn't just lead, he set the rhythm for everyone around him. Frank didn't chase moments. He created them. She laughs, the sound tinged with nostalgia. Every time he turned those blue eyes on you, you had to remember to breathe. That kind of magnetism? You don't forget it. 4. Clint Eastwood. Raquel smiles before the name is even spoken. Clint, she says, drawing it out like a favorite note. You didn't need a second take to see why every director in town wanted him. He walked on set, and the air changed, tightened somehow. Still, quiet, dangerous in the most interesting way. She laughs. Clint never had to raise his voice. He'd give you a look that said more than a whole page of dialogue. You'd be sitting there between takes. He'd tilt his head, maybe murmur something dry, and suddenly everyone within earshot was leaning in. If silence could flirt, that's what it sounded like. They first crossed paths during the late 60s and 70s run of westerns and crime dramas. We were both living in that space between the old studio system and the new Hollywood. Clint brought authenticity to it. Dust, sweat, patience. You couldn't fake that. You learned by watching him. She pauses, thoughtful. He was meticulous, always watching the light, the pacing, the smallest gesture. I'd finish a scene and he'd quietly say, that was the one. No speech, no fuss. He just knew. Then her expression softens. He was kind in that understated way. He'd help a young actor with a scene, lend a hand moving gear, listen when someone had a problem. There's real strength in that kind of quiet steadiness. She smiles, a little wistful. Clint Eastwood taught me that stillness can be its own form of power. You don't have to fill the room, you just have to own the quiet. That's a rare gift, and I never forgot it. 5. Paul Newman. Raquel's smile softens the moment his name is mentioned. Paul, she says, almost under her breath, as if the sound itself deserves respect. Now there was the definition of effortless. Everything about him, his talent, his looks, his charm, was completely unforced. He didn't need to perform the part of a star. He just was one. She laughs gently. When you worked near Paul, you noticed how calm he made a set feel. There was never any noise around him, just focus. Even between takes, he'd be the same. Thoughtful, steady, kind. It's a rare thing in this business to meet someone who can be both commanding and gentle at the same time. She thinks for a moment. People remember the eyes, of course. You couldn't not. But for me, it was the way he carried himself. There was humor in everything he did. Never cynical, just amused. He had this knack for making you laugh when you were nervous. You'd be worried about your lines, and he'd whisper something that reminded you to have fun. That's a real partner in a scene. Raquel's tone turns reflective. Paul loved actors. You could feel it. He watched what you were doing, responded to it, elevated it. Every exchange felt alive. He was generous that way. He wanted you to shine right alongside him. Then she smiles, eyes bright. He used to say acting was just telling the truth under imaginary circumstances. Watching him, you understood what he meant. He told the truth every time the camera rolled. No artifice, no games, just honesty. And it was beautiful. She lets out a small laugh. You meet a lot of stars in this business, but very few like Paul Newman. He reminded you what the job was really about: connection, respect, and grace under pressure. That's the kind of memory that never fades. 6. Sean Connery. Raquel lets out a laugh before the question is even finished. Sean Connery, she repeats, almost tasting the name. You could spot him a mile away. That stride, that voice, that complete certainty in who he was. The first time I met him, I thought, well, that's what they mean by presence. He didn't need the tuxedo or the martini. He was James Bond even when he was just walking to lunch. She shakes her head, smiling. We worked together during a period when everyone was chasing a little bit of that Bond energy. But Sean didn't chase anything. He carried it. You'd be doing a scene and he'd lower his voice just a fraction, and suddenly the whole room would lean forward. He could fill a frame without moving an inch. Her tone warms. He was a gentleman in the truest sense. Polite, funny, curious. He'd ask about your family, your next project, what books you were reading. Beneath all that power was a great listener. I think that's why audiences trusted him. They felt he was paying attention. Raquel chuckles, and of course, he was wickedly funny. Completely dry. He could turn the simplest comment into a one-liner that left everyone howling. He had that Scottish rhythm to his humor. Deliberate, unexpected, perfect. She pauses, thoughtful now. Sean taught you that real confidence isn't loud. It's calm, measured, self-contained. He didn't compete, he collaborated. And when you stood opposite him, you didn't want to imitate him, you wanted to match him. Then she smiles, almost wistful. There's a reason his name still makes people sit up straighter. Sean Connery reminded everyone what it meant to be magnetic and professional at the same time. He was one of a kind, and I'm grateful I got to see that magic up close.